Welcome to this. There we go. You can say hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. Welcome to today's conversation with me around awakening individuality, a path to the Aquarius age. First off, I just want to give everybody a little bit of a roadmap around what it is that I'm actually going to do today. So I'd like to share a little bit about my vision on what I see in the world and what I see as something that I feel is the natural progression of human consciousness, and how that is operating. And part of the reasoning for me feeling so compelled to do that is because for people that are sitting here today, you're obviously part of this journey. You're on this fractal and you can see it, and you might not necessarily have a lot to learn from today's discussion with myself, but for people that are learning about this for the first time or getting aware of what this is about, this is something in which I would like to really bring attention to. Okay. The second thing is that I've got a couple of slides that I'd like to share with everybody, just some basic and some really core, deep, thought-provoking concepts that I would like to bring across as the framework for this conversation. And then I would really, really, really like it if everybody, and no pressure, but as I'm going through this conversation with you today, just to pay attention to any thoughts that you might have arise naturally during my sharing, and for you to engage in me with any of those questions that you have or curiosities or any thread in which I can kind of respond to in a way that's linked with what you might be wanting to understand or explore or get a deeper perspective of what it is that I'm really trying to put across in today's conversation. So if there's anything that is naturally coming up for you during that conversation, please, I invite you deeply to get questions or have questions, because I'd like to do a Q&A experience. Okay. So awakening individuality, path to Aquarius age. I feel that the Aquarius age in itself is a very abstract concept, and I feel that it's something that I feel is deeply, deeply open to interpretation. I feel that a lot of what that symbolizes for many people in their psyche has been corrupted by the outdated perceptions of what Aquarius symbolizes or does symbolize. And part of my main aim today with this process is to bring what I consider to be, and what I've actually researched from the teachings of evolutionary astrology, what would be the natural progression or what the natural actual Aquarius archetype looks like, or the Aquarian age looks like. I also feel that this progression into a new age is something that's going to take longer than just, a couple of years of our own personal life. I feel that we each, within our lifespan of 70 to 80 years, are part of an awakening aspect, but I feel the totality of what it will actually symbolize or represent is something that I don't feel that my kids or their kids in themselves could actually see fully, because I feel like it's a very deep mutation, a very deep process that will be occurring. But I do feel that this is, we're at this point where we can have the ability to see it in like progressively becoming more available to our eyesight. Whereas like maybe 200, 300 years ago, even though we were progressing into this Aquarius framework, it's still something that was very much not available to our own self-awareness. Okay. So I hope I haven't kind of like confused anybody over there. I hope that I've really kind of given you something to think about in terms of what I've shared. And there's a trajectory, and that trajectory is this awakening process, and kind of like reconstructing it in a way that's very grounded and healthy and allows us to really see the fractal that is the Aquarius age for what it is, and to discern between what is a pseudo-Aquarian manifestation rooted in deception and just developing consciousness and what it actually looks like in organic form. That would be like the best way to summarize what I said. Okay, so I've got a slide over here, and I'm gonna put that up for everybody to see. And so before I jump into sharing this, is everybody able to see? Actually, I've just kind of skipped a lot of slides here, so I'm just gonna cancel here for a second.
Yes, I can see them, SΥmონ.
Okay, fantastic. So, okay. So what you're looking at right now, I'm just going to have to do that because I really want the animation. Okay. So this is really, really arbitrary, but it really does explain this trajectory in a very poetic way. Okay. Imagine that this triangle represents the development of consciousness through key aspects of evolution over a long period of time. I'm talking, let's go back even 15,000 years as an example. Again, very abstract, very arbitrary, something that the brain can't really conceptualize, but on an intuitive level, there's a deepened awareness regarding these imagery that I'm going to share with you. So what we're understanding here is that this point of entry reflects this awakening within human behavior, and the relationship that we have had to the universe, to life itself at this point in time, is very much in the moment experience. It's very primitive. It's the framework of our human development. And from the point of view of the brain itself and how the brain has developed, this would be considered to be the primal brain. Okay, so our responses on fight or flight, the reptilian aspect. Okay, so think about our evolution as we've evolved through these mutations in our DNA, mutations in our consciousness. This would be this part over here would be reflected, and I'll just use an annotation over here. Okay, again, the main focus that I'm really trying to give everybody here is the progression of human behavior and evolution through the ages and where we are right now and what we have been doing in the past. So this would be this very primal developmental phase, and I'll get into it more deeper. And imagine that the flow of energy would move across to this aspect over here, taking with it the mutation of our DNA and all of the experiences over many years of and cycles, earth cycles of conscious development, reaching a point in which we would receive certain cycles, certain astrological alignments, certain planetary configurations that would trigger a mutation. And so we would get to this point over here where I feel the birthing process was and where we are today. So where we are today is this progressive awareness that there is this spirit that exists within the human. Whereas this process over here is the development of the thorax and the mind and our ability to begin to develop time and the concept of time from a mental sphere. Now you can imagine that the first process in which this began to occur was something that is not even close to as advanced as what we have today in terms of our ability to use the masculine principle. So I would actually call this the feminine principle, and I would say then that this would be like a mutation, an experience that happened within our genetics, within our ego structure, in which we began to explore the masculine principle on its own. So we had this deep feminine process and then began to, over a period of time, and this is what like evolutionary astrology would consider to be the progressive developments of patriarchy, as an example, or the masculine principle of defending through ego. So something traumatized us in some way, shape, or form as a human race, and where we are today, you ask yourself this question: the psyche has defense mechanisms. Why do we have defense mechanisms in our psyche? Are they there to protect us from certain woundings, certain traumas? Think about the process of that on a collective level. think about the earth as one organism in itself, and that consciousness of that organism has its own defense mechanisms, which would be then translated into this physical material plane as something that is very much about our weaponry system, the development of armor. You know, I'll get into it a bit later in terms of the actual slides that represent that. Now, this is what I would consider to be the natural arcing of our evolution, and we're reaching this point right now in which we're beginning to access the emotional center. We're beginning to access the realization of awareness. And so that's why this little triangle over here is so beautiful, because if you watch it very carefully, you'd notice that it's very fast at the moment, but you'd notice that it moves across like that. And it's like the awareness of spirit over time. It's the process of how life is operating through these three principles. Okay. So Trinity, not a coincidence. So this would be the development of spirit. Now, for most of us, this development of spirit is perceived and seen in the world as the chaos in which we see in terms of the emotional unrest, say, for instance, in all countries, but the emotional unrest that we all experience as a collective. The uncertainty that is occurring through the way in which our governments are developing, uncertainty in which the way that the world is going. All of these emotions that we're experiencing on a collective level and individually are all rooted in this awakening of the spirit, awakening of this emotional center. And it's very primitive in its development, as it could be with this process over here and this process over there. So this emotional center that's being awoken at this point in time is leading us to a point in which we are going to be, and I feel like this cycle will take at least 2, in my opinion. But then again, and I have got an intuitive feeling towards it, so that's why it's subjective in the sense, but I feel at least another Pluto return. So another 256 years before Pluto hits its own, like the South Node, or its own Pluto. And so its return process before this mutation gets to a point in which it actually, and that's what I was talking about earlier, about us not even getting to see what that's about, but being at the forefront of this. And that's why this is so deeply fascinating to me. And so I'm so passionate about this and trying to express this in a way that really captures your imagination as you can see it being manifested in the world. Okay, so coming back to this thing again, this mutation of this emotional center, Pluto and Capricorn, right? So that's forming over there. That's how you would translate it in astrology. Okay, so remember in the first slide, right at the bottom, I spoke about this natural birthing process. If you look at the nature of the way in which we develop our sense of awareness in the moment, it's something that when you operate, when you're understanding the body, when you're functioning and recognizing what the body is actually doing, when it's interfacing with reality, you will notice that we all have this very in the moment expression of awareness that develops. And we ask ourselves, like, where is that development taking place? And also the development of survival, right? Can you see this here? Can you see this picture? Look at the imagery that I'm provoking with this process. When we lived as human beings at an awareness that was very much connected to this, like we take it for granted, mobile phones, food, all these types of things were around, it was around, but it's not the truth. You just have to go back 300 years and look at the way that we lived. And a lot of us were in a deep state of fear. My question to you right now is, think about the progression of spirit at this point in time moving through us. Think about what we are releasing on a deep level. Every single one of us at some point has processed fear. This fear didn't originate out of thin air. It's part of our genetic coding. It is part of our development. It is there for its specific reason. But we have reached a point within our evolution in which that type of fear doesn't need to be activated 24/7, unless you're living in very primitive countries. So think about the process over here of the development of survival at that entry point many years ago, like eons in that sense. And if you even bring in the Indian philosophy, the Yuga philosophy, and the Kali Yuga cycle that humanity has been moving through for, God knows how long, you can see that the darkness of awareness has been really much cloaking Earth and our progression as a collective. So again, this natural birthing process in the moment awareness. And we began to then move, as I said, progressively through the left over here. It doesn't matter which side it is, just the idea of moving to a point in which we began to manifest time and manifest the masculine ego. Think about what the manifestation of time was created through. Here you have a tribe in its deep process of looking at the universe and observing cycles, not measuring them, but just observing them in the moment. It's raining right now. Okay, we need to respond to this situation right now in the moment. Very primitive. But over a period of time, there would be this progressive idea through mutation going, hold on, if we plant our crops during the summer or during the spring, and we observe the nature of the ground, and then we also observe that by the time the shifting of the planets occur, and we notice that the plants have risen to a point in which we can harvest them, we can do this consecutively every single time. There's this patterning. We began to recognize logical patterning. So the linearity of the left mind began to come into process, in which we didn't need to rely so much on the moment-to-moment basis of development, but more on something in which we could measure things, the measurement of stuff. Now think about the development of the masculine principle. Think about its process in which when you are in a company and in the past, which is the point of the spirit awareness, okay? In the past, most companies, in fact, when I say the past, I mean in the sense that it's still visible today, but those types of systems are breaking down deeply because of the mutation within our collective awareness. But those systems would measure things through profit. Oh, the success of my business is measured through profit. It's not measured through my customer service or what I'm trying to achieve or what am I sharing in terms of awareness. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with the fact that I'm going to measure this, measurement masculine, over time and use stats and data. Now, for any of you that has a deep sensitivity towards the emotional body and towards your right brain, when you get into a situation when you need to analyze Virgo, there's no coincidence that Virgo being ruled by the feminine side of Mercury, is this analyst, this process of collecting data and analyzing it and then forming conclusions based on that on linear form. Anybody phoned a customer service in the UK or any place, and you've got a human emotional situation that requires the other person on the other side to have empathy from your situation, they go, sorry, the computer says no. Or, sorry, this situation is, because our systems are set up like this, we can't integrate your emotional situation to this, so therefore we can't help you. And it's like, there's this blinker going, there's the person here that all you need to do is just tap into your own emotional center and go, okay, this is how I can sort it out. I mean, I like I said, I worked in the UK for a company where the logical system was in place, and there are benefits to that. But when you talk to somebody that deeply just requires you to have a little bit of empathy to understand the situation, to solve it, like it's silly. It's really, really funny when you actually begin to see how funny we are as human beings when we manifest through the left brain and through the logical system, and we completely have lost touch with the heart. And again, the process of losing touch with the heart is actually pretty natural, because the manifestation of time and the ego masculine form, look at the way that we have created our structures. If you go watch on YouTube, there's a wonderful talk by Mark Jones called The Pluto and Virgo Generation. And he talks about the natural formation of how we created our architecture through this generation, through this Virgo-Pisces axis. And you'll notice that there's a deep beauty. Like look at how that castle, how that building has been formed. Look at the Virgo-ness in the process. You can even see the Pisces process as well, and the masculine form, because the masculine form is completely going upwards. It's a vertical and ascension-orientated expression of consciousness. We're looking for God. And yet the feminine principle is actually lateral. It's moving across, not vertical, right? So when we have developed our truths relative to the evolution of the mind, we have developed the search for enlightenment through accessing God in a higher state of awareness, whereas that's actually pulling us out of our body. Big no-no, right? So the evolution of spirit. And it's really, really fascinating because when Pluto transited through Sagittarius from 1995 up until 2008, those souls that were born during that period of time carry a profound sense of expression, of uniqueness. That is what I consider to be the first generation of souls that will reflect the natural path to the heart. Because not only do most of them have, not all of them, especially the earlier parts, but most of them will have the Uranus in Aquarius and Neptune transit through Aquarius. And I watch them. I study the Pluto and Sag kids, and they're like, yeah, I'm just natural. Like whatever's natural for me. But they're also deeply, deeply being conditioned by the internet because of the technological developments that the masculine principle has brought to us. So, you know, there's another side to that Aquarius process of detachment. But the point that I'm trying to bring across is that the evolution of spirit is moving into awareness. And there's a massive difference between awareness and measuring things through logic. Because awareness is something that is over time. It manifests over time. It is a developmental process of seeing things in a more multidimensional way, and the process of looking into the depths. And that's why this picture over here is what I'm really trying to capture. Like, this is the toroidal field. This is the progression of awareness as it moves through. Like, you would be the center over here, and the masculine principle flowing in from the top, and the feminine principle grounding it from the bottom. And this coil over here would be the fabric of your reality. You can even see it beautifully as the south node and north node as an example, as the wheel of your life turns and the picture of it manifests according to whatever your trajectory is about. You understand? So the reason why I find this deeply fascinating is because it's not a coincidence that things like evolutionary astrology would have become more popular and more useful as a tool for measuring the trajectory of the soul right now than ever before. Because every single person on some level at some point is being affected by this experience, whether it be at the level in which we feel deeply disempowered and we're acting out of rage, which you can see in, you know, very large parts of the world, and also in a more kind of like higher state of evolution. And when I use the word higher state, I just mean more like developed awareness. You're seeing more of the realization that we're purging deep karmic trauma and purging deep karmic experiences that no longer are necessary for the trajectory of our evolution. And they're just being burnt off when we're raising our awareness to become more aware of what consciousness is. And it's about accessing that third, the ajna, and seeing our lives through time. You know, have you ever done that experiment where you've looked at yourself across time and watched how your soul and your body has changed shape? And have you ever wondered how your emotional reaction towards that is about? You know, that's the awareness I'm talking about, because in that moment, you get to see the difference between when you were there at, say, 28 and when you were 40, as an example. You get to see that awareness over time, and that's what we're here for. And then when we get into this process, we begin to recognize this. Okay. So I'm just going to stop there for a second. Linda, can you just let me know how much time I've got left?
Just over half an hour.
Thank you. Okay. This is huge. This is huge. When it comes to understanding the transition between the Virgo-Pisces axis and the Aquarius-Leo axis, again, no coincidence that we've got the Leo-Aquarius axis manifesting itself right now. This Virgo-Pisces axis for the last 2,000 years, and, you know, for even longer, is something that has deeply conditioned the nature of what we consider to be reality. We are purging a great deal of what this symbolized for us. And when you look at your astrology chart, you know, if you're able to become sensitive to the frequency that is this Virgo-Pisces axis and the time frames and the nature of what that symbolizes, the symbolic representation of those archetypes, and then you look at your astrology chart, you can begin to actually access those timelines and timeframes of your soul's process. And every single one of us, especially the Pluto and Virgo generation, but for some of you that have got Virgo South nodes, North node Virgo Pisces stuff, you know, at some point, you've been said, you know, somebody said to you, oh, do you remember your past life? And you go like, yeah, you know, I feel like I was burnt at the stake. Or I feel like I was part of a witch hunt, where I carry this unconscious feeling of nervousness around wanting to express my truth in front of people that might not get it, or fear of being persecuted. Like, where does that come from? Well, simple. The Virgo Pisces axis is finding God, is the genetic imprint within our collective evolution over the last 2,000 years, in which we've been trying to search for the meaning of our existence through exactly that, like a meaning. And that meaning has, and again, okay, this is what I want to show you here. Observe the behavior of this person's consciousness. Where are they looking? They're looking upwards. What are they forming a relationship to? A cross. Okay. Now look at the architecture there. Okay. Look at who is at the stake in relationship to what is causing it. Look at the detail of the weaponry there. Okay. Is that feminine principles to you? Are those feminine concepts to you? No, they're masculine. Okay. Right. So when we look at this here and we go back to my original slide regarding the manifestation of time, the masculine ego principle, is that just a coincidence that those types of manifestations are like that? Where is consciousness trying to get to? Where are we trying to achieve? What we're trying to look for, right? Now let's go back to here. Regression of awareness comes from an outside. We're developing something that's existential. We're finding meaning in an existential world. And the progression of awareness is going internal, awakening the individuality, awakening something that is inside of us. The process in which we are moving through at this point in time is the progressive awareness and shifting of our consciousness from existential things that we have give meaning to, that reflect to us who we are, to the internal dialogue, to the internal process, to the internal awakening, to the internal manifestation and realization of the infinite cosmos that exists here. There is no limitation in there. It's a field of infiniteness. That's why this picture here is why I chose it specifically. Look at here. It's like this human being is limited by their material existence. But once you go inside into the depths of your own psyche, your own soul, you have infiniteness. The peripheral awareness of development of consciousness. It's all peripheral. It's all taking in. It's all absorbing. It's internal. Pluto and Sagittarius generation. Sagittarius correlates to the archetype of natural law. It correlates to the archetype of the natural expansion of our truth and our belief system and what is natural for us, a connection back with nature. And so we explore, and it also shows us the progression into the right brain, right? But we can't forget about the past. So what are we doing? We're integrating it. So this process here of this imagery here is to invoke the natural archetypes and truths that we have held and built our societies and rules around. And that process has been also the suppression of the feminine. And just in a sense of like the rejection of it, because of whatever reasoning, there are many theories around the process, around the masculine principle of being of service to the matriarchy in a way in which they felt that their heart chakra, the masculine principle, was being suppressed, and then, burst out and said, bugger this, we're going to move into a direction that is for our own good, and then progressively overturn until the suppression of the feminine exists. Either way, we're looking at these themes that we remember very closely to our lives. I mean, most Pluto and Virgo generations souls grew up going to church in some way, even though you have Uranus conjunct Pluto in your chart. It's not a coincidence that right now we are breaking those religious conditionings in such an intense way. And the Pluto and Virgos, in a sense, are like going, yeah, we're doing this. We don't really know why we're doing it. Pluto square Uranus in the first quarter, but we're doing it. This is what we're breaking down. That's why I say the context and framework of this experience is really new in that sense, because that mutation is just happening for us right now. Okay, so we're looking for meaning. We're looking for meaning in everything. Think about how relationships operate. The needing a savior. Look at the imagery here. What did Christ represent? And now, there, you know, with all due respect, there are positive understandings of the process of Christ, and then there is the delusion that is manifested through the misinterpretations that through the vibration of darkness and suppression has manifested as sacrifice. I will sacrifice my life for you, martyrdom in that sense, right? The sacrifice. And we do. When you look at religious conditioning of all forms in some way, shape, or form, there is this deep process in which we sacrifice something of ourselves for the greater good. We sacrifice our individuality, our sense of thoughts, our sense of everything in search for the process of being accepted by a existential savior that we frameworked as God. Oh, it's the meaning through this process. And I can honestly tell you right now, if I show you my astrology chart, I've lived the story. It's like the reason why I feel so intensely about this is because I feel like so much of my soul has experienced these lives of going, yeah, I'm going to sacrifice all my desires in search for this perfect harmony. And then kind of like live these lifetimes of just having all of this rage buried because of these suppression archetypes, because of a belief system, a cosmology that was looking for an external savior. I mean, it permeates my chart in an intense way. So we have this existential savior, and there we create this cross, and we're here, right? And we're looking up, we're looking at God, and we're trying to find it, enlightenment. So, dear God, I know that I'm perfect, but I want to thank you for loving me anyway. Now, again, I'm not an atheist. I don't subscribe to any things of like God doesn't exist. But I am saying that the context in which we have referenced God in the past has been from some existential extension of ourselves. And even that process has been severed. Go read Jeffrey Wolf Green's book, number 2, Pluto, The Garden of Eden Myth. Spirit and matter antagonistic. Why? Why is matter? Matter is the feminine principle. Spirit, the masculine principle. They're supposed to meet together. That's what the cross is about. Yet, when we have the masculine principle, we have Adam in the Garden of Eden saying, okay, well, God, now I have done something wrong. I've eaten from the tree of knowledge, and so therefore I'm going to be banished. So what that translates to in the psychology of human is that the man goes out and works for an employer, and he follows the rules of the government and his employer, creating the psychological disempowerment psyche and going, okay, I am not able to make choices for myself. I'm not able to think for my own consciousness and question things for my own thing. I just accept. I just understand. I just obey. The feminine principle just goes, well, I feel guilty for the fact that I was the one that caused you to have to do this process of your practice towards getting enlightenment. Look at the practices in the past. It's all about a deep devotion towards finding the mystical experience upward like that. So we're all finding this mystical experience. We're searching for it. Where are we searching for? The thing is right in front of us. It's called the body. It's the temple. So the whole purpose of coming into the spirit awareness is the realization that the whole entire mutation process works in the body. But if we're externalizing it through looking outside of ourselves, then what we're doing is we're setting ourselves up for just a life of the mental plane. So it's separation, Virgo-Pisces, separateness. That is what we're trying to heal in this process. So all of our experiences, everything's in Cancer right now. Mars opposed Pluto. Anybody feeling not emotional at this stage? Everybody going, oh, what's the narrative? There's no point in going with the narrative because it's the mind. Watch your awareness over time, watch for the triggers, and you'll get into understanding what those processes are about within the psyche. So anyway, I just want to come back to this. The process of God saying thank you to God is saying, thank you, existential person, for accepting me into life, going, I'm imperfect, which is not the truth. We're moving into the Aquarius age of resonance. There's a massive difference. So this process is something lacking in me. When we create these agreements, I just want to share something with you guys over here. How many of you have actually sat down for 5 minutes and considered the fact that if one entire process in the manufacture of our food that we get at the shopping store just breaks down because the bargain that has been created amongst the chain of manufacturers and the people that get the food from the producer to the consumer breaks down, what do you think will happen in the supermarket? You'll go to the supermarket and say, oh, there's no more, soya sauce or something, or you'll love. Think about this process in which we begin to awaken to the realization that for a lot of us, we wake up every single day and we go and do things that we might not necessarily enjoy because of our own separateness within ourselves, our own awakeness to what is meaningful for us. So our spirit begins to awaken, and we start to notice the fabric of our whole entire reality begins to shift a little bit and break and go like, hold on, I don't actually want to wake up anymore and go, I love this big flat screen TV and this car over here, so I'm going to work 6 hours a day to get the finances to support that. And then I'm just like the film Fight Club talks about, the process of you get all the things, and then at some point those things just own you. All of our things just own us. Now, I'm not saying that we have to disregard completely our masculine like creations. We're improving on them, but the spirit wants to be free, and it's this process of feeling limited in our ways that we have created agreements and arrangements with. And a lot of people in their awakening process, as we begin into the Aquarius age, is not interested anymore in sacrifice and finding existential meaning. They're going like, my heart needs to be awoken and I want to follow what that trajectory is about. So a lot of these bonds that we've made, or people make, especially for like consensus reality, think about the structure of society when the bus driver decides one day to wake up and go, look, I don't want to drive buses anymore. I'm only doing it because I need to pay for things that I don't really like anymore. Anybody gone through a Pluto second house transit when you just all of a sudden recognize that none of the things that you thought you needed were of importance anymore? It's just like, oh, look, that's not useful anymore. And it's just sitting there as a thing. That's this progression that I'm talking about here, right? Where we've gone from the masculine existential creation of things, all of the material things that we've manifested, and we're going into the spirit, the emotional bond. How many of you feel like you would spend more time with a friend talking and exploring consciousness and the awareness of yourself, and then spending time doing something that you don't like that's supporting another person's ideas and dreams for them to live a happy life while you get a certain paycheck that defines your value, just so that you can have the idea of success measured through the masculine principle, which is everything about how big my house is, or how fancy my car is, or how wonderful my telephone looks. And again, I'm ranting over here, so I do apologize for the intensity. Anyway, the last slide over here talks about the Aquarius age. It talks about the process of recognizing that Aquarius correlates to the archetype of the brain. And there are some fascinating things that is arising right now in terms of people learning more about, neuroplasticity, the way that we rewire the brain in terms of creating new neurons and new synapses through interacting with the phenomena of reality relative to choices that we've made on a soulful level, recreating the framework in which we see things. The brain is reconstructing itself. And we're also recognizing and developing this awareness around the biochemistry of the brain. Oh, hold on. We didn't realize, yes, there's actually, quote unquote, a second brain. It exists in the belly. Well, gluten products, sugar, things like this, we start to consume them and we go, why are we having brain fog? Hold on, let's try and eat things that are more manufactured, that are more organic and less manufactured material, because every time you look at something that's on a shelf that's got a sell-by date, it's got all these chemicals in it. Our body wasn't designed for that. That's where masculine principle has now reached its end. Okay, guys, fantastic. Now we've got to begin to bring in the bio-organic structure of humanity. In other words, the body is the focus point. The body is the key to everything. It's the temple. And the brain is where we're going to explore more. We're going to get fascinated by it. We're going to understand how it's operating, how the synapses are manifesting as we interact with the electromagnetic spectrum. So the exploration of consciousness and how it works. Where is consciousness? What is your consciousness about? So remember the Pink Floyd picture where it's the triangle and then the light moves through that and then it comes out the other side, the rainbow spectrum? What is your rainbow spectrum? That's where, to me, astrology is fascinating. That's where, to me, the archetype of human design is fascinating, because all of a sudden we begin to see what trajectory and themes the fractal of light is representing, right? So what is your fractal? What are you here to see? What are you showing us? And yeah, I'm doing it right now in terms of what I see. This is what the light looks like through my perspective. And I'm here in a way that is so much about sharing. I just want to share as much as I can. So this working over here is about sharing this material. And that is my individuality, awakening to the fact that every time I'm sitting here, I'm buzzing because of the amount of joy and ecstasy that is floating through my brain right now, because I get to love this and also experience it and experience myself. The Aquarius polarity, Leo Aquarius, self-validation, self-love through the expression of individuality, right? And then this deep concept, awareness. How many of you sit and watch your story, watch your life, watch the fractal, watch your transits, and then watch the type of people that come into your life. Watch that fractal that moves through you and see what your soul's showing you. We're searching for God and the meaning of our existence outside of ourselves, but really it's right in front of us, moving through like this, going, hey, dude, this is what you're seeing today. Waking up every single day and going, okay, what am I going to see today? It's like a surprise. When you look at your long-term transits, you go, oh, okay, Pluto's moving through my 8th house. And all of a sudden you start to notice just tons of people, that you come into contact with. Oh, I'm getting a new job. I feel really empowered. Oh, my cat died. Like all the framework and themes of the constellation Scorpio are manifesting through you. And you get to experience that, pay attention to it, and then learn from that experience. That's how I see the outer planet's trajectory. It's this process of these slow planets that are actually awakening aspects of your chart. So for me, I will never have Pluto transit my 4th house in this lifetime. But I will have Pluto transit my 12th, where it's right now, and 11th, and 1st house, and maybe halfway through the 2nd. So I'll get to see that aspect of evolution through those frameworks. But I will never get to see that 4th house, but I get to see people through my work have that 4th house transit. And I get to see what they're sharing with me. The awareness of spirit, the realization and awakening of our individuality and the progression of awareness, consciousness, illumination and enlightenment through that process. And resonance. I hope it's on the next slide over here. No, it's not. Okay. I must have not taken it out, but it was resonance. When you look at the nervous system, there's the sympathetic and there's a parasympathetic nervous system. And when you look at tuning forks, there was a beautiful picture which I didn't put on, but when you take 2 tuning forks, there's an electromagnetic wavelength. And the one receives the other through the activation of the parasympathetic system. We have sympathetic and parasympathetic. So sympathetic is I'm expressing. You're in a sympathetic, parasympathetic state because you're receiving. It's like we're waking up to this dynamic that it's all electromagnetics. All relationships are the process of our individuality interacting with each other. The reason why relationships work and don't work is just chemistry and how the electromagnetics work. Some person might activate your throat and you speak a lot, and that's your transit. Some person you might get into a relationship and be with it for 6 or 7 years, and it activates your ability to feel empowered through your emotions. And you look at the transit, oh, look, that's what's so beautiful about studying astrology. That's what's so beautiful about watching the story, because we get all these beautiful tools to see ourselves. And the potential to see ourselves is literally limited to whatever it is that your consciousness is getting stimulated by. And that's transcendence, the authentic one, the actual realization of God within us, instead of this idea of we are one that manipulates our mind to think that we've just got to forgive people because, oneness exists. That's not what it's about. It's the integration of the masculine and feminine principle into the self. So here's another thing that I want to share. The process of, and I'm so on my soapbox at the moment, so I do apologize. I know I wanted to have a conversation, but what can you do? This Save Your Earth thing, I'm going to be super confrontational, a little bit sort of like maybe triggering everybody a little bit but Save the Earth thing. It's the attention of the process is outside of ourselves. That's not where it's got to be. The moment that we put our attention outside of ourselves to save something that's existential, that is far more greater than our own personal being, we don't have the electromagnetic energy to influence it. So the only thing that you can save is yourself. And when you save yourself, the nature of your consciousness will create the necessary vibration to affect whatever it is that will be existential. That's how you do it. So the earth that you're actually coming to is your own body. So clear that out through the emotions, through the release of the emotions. And that's where we are at, again, cancer story. Everybody's feeling emotional. Why? Just let those emotions go out. Go out and sit alone with those emotions for 10 minutes and just watch the feelings. Just feel the feelings. Don't try and put a narrative to it, because emotions and the brain fundamentally are different. One's biochemistry that has absolutely no rationality to it, and the brain's going, oh, I've got to figure out this linear path. We can watch the story and watch the consistent patterning and then get kind of like something over time. But for us, these emotions are rooted within ourselves. So when we purify ourselves, when we begin to eat cleaner and we recognize the temple. So instead of going, to the car wash and looking at your car and saying, wow, existential object that measures my success, you're so beautiful. And then you look at your own body and you're needing to take tons of medication to keep certain parts of your body like functioning. It's not okay. And that's the transition. That's the switch. It's not a coincidence that a lot of human beings right now that are super young, and also, Pluto and Scorpios, are deeply, deeply sensitive to food coloring, deeply, deeply sensitive to vaccines, deeply, deeply sensitive to all forms of chemical manifestations that we've made to enhance our ability to get food quicker to us. Again, controversial. How many of us use microwaves? The reason why we use a microwave is because we're running on time. We're like, okay, let's go. How do you think our sympathetic nervous system is being stimulated consistently? Everybody's suffering from adrenal fatigue. Why? Because it's got to go. Whereas the new human, the experience of us is more into the relaxed state of just following the fractal and watching us move according to our dream and watch the beauty. It's like there's so much depth. That's what we're going for. We're going for depth. Not height anymore. It's not vertical. It's profound. So when we manufacture the future, we use solar energy because we understand that the sun is what carries the neutrino field. It awakens the process within ourselves. And so it gives life in that sense. So when we create our solar energy and we develop these masculine principles, we use our developed masculine principles to capture the energy from the universe and then turn it into something that supports our biosphere, then we've got the beautiful harmony of integrating nature and how it works with the masculine principle. Feminine, masculine, bind. That's where we're going. If we can find that integration where they're both harmonizing at the same time, the third entity that manifests out of it is the earth that it is that we want to live with. But when we find that in ourselves, we find it existentially, because it's an as beloved, so below kind of experience. Okay, so that's that over there. I'm going to press the stop share thing. I've got 12 minutes left. Anybody that's still alive, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
That was great. I have to add something about just
yeah, feel free, please.
Talking about the sensitivity of the Scorpio and to the food coloring and all of that, and it's very true. My own daughter has that sensitivity, and and she has a sensitivity to food. She's very selective, and it's more of a natural kind of diet that she prefers. So it's kind of interesting that you would have that commentary in there, and it's well aligned with what I'm experiencing. She was born with in 2006 with the Pluto Sag detail. So
and Uranus and Pisces as well.
And Pisces, yeah. So that was really interesting. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I can even take that a little bit one step further and say that each of us on a genetic level are designed to eat food in accordance with what is natural for us. So for me, like, we're deeply conditioned to think, and this was part of this agreement bargain thing with the family structure. We've got this family structure that we've lived in the past that had certain rules and regulations. And we would like go, okay, not me personally, I'm talking all of us. We would need to eat food at 6 o'clock at night. How many of us have a biorhythm that needs to eat at 6 o'clock at night? And it's deeply, deeply controversial because immediately we get triggered and confronted around the belief systems that we hold around what we think is true. But really, it's our conditioning that says, okay, I've conditioned my body to behave a certain way, but really the conditioning has been suppressed our own connection to our feelings around when it's correct for us to eat, that we don't honor that process. And then we wonder why the aging process operates the way that we do, but we're so clueless about it. And again, I'm not saying that everybody is. I'm not saying, I'm not being judgmental here. I'm saying that this is true. Like, you can see it. You can see that the more that we get into the Aquarius age, the more it's about honoring the body's natural things. And I watched, like with myself as an example, I can't eat any food if there's chaos around me. It's like my body just freaks out. Like my partner, for instance, she needs to eat food consistently on the mark every single time. Otherwise, her brain chemistry freaks out. The same with mine as well. It's like we're honoring the neurobiology by recognizing how we are interfacing with the phenomena of reality and how the body is interfacing with it. And not being like, yeah, just the conditioning of rejecting it. It's a very like huge conversation. And sensitivity to food colorings and all those things, they're unnatural, and the body is just becoming more awakened. So the more we become more awakened to that process, the more we're actually going to have to go through a process of a parent like yourself, Sarah, and myself, and many of you others that have got children that are going, this world is full of poison. And we're having to like interact with it in a level that's not easy. It's not fun to have to make choices in your day-to-day existence that are limited because of the way that where we are at this stage and how this purification process is taking place.
It was great conversations, great dialogue around this. Because, you know, from the conscious parenting perspective, but also what we experienced as kids and our parents, maybe the food battles that we had when we were kids. You know, you're going to sit there till you eat. There's starving kids in China and da-da. But when I became a parent, I was like, that's not going to work. You know, there's high resistance, and I'm like, that I don't want to be putting that on my daughter. So we go, okay, we have to try things. Let's just try different foods and make it a selective kind of smorgasbord and see what goes, right? And not such a battle. So that's very interesting.
That's the bargain that's breaking. That's the change. That's the manifestation of the new frequency. And just the fact that you're interfacing with it and having your own mind like confronted by your own conditioning and going, no, I'm going to break this down. That's the Aquarius age process. So cool.
Thank you very much, SΥmÖN. I love your passion. I want to show you this one. Can you see it?
Yeah.
I just bought it.
I love the synchronicity. That's what it means to be on the perfect fractal. It's such a beautiful thing. It's like when you're in synchronicity with your own path, the process of the fractal, the way that you see things, what's working for you, it like just organically works. It's not even, there's no resistance. It's not like, oh, I've got to, like the Capricorn archetype. Oh my God, it's driving me nuts. And again, you know, I take a lot of risks to challenge the way that we see the Capricorn archetype. But to me, through its masculine form, it's like, you know, we've got to dedicate, we've got to fight for things, we've got to build and stamina and all of this. Whereas to me, the Capricorn energy is deeply, deeply feminine. It's this process of internalization of emotions and the way that we feel about things. And then like, you know, moving through stuff, but not needing to like fight, you know, like battle things or argue, you know what I mean? It's like, if you just don't resonate with what I'm saying, that's the fractal that you belong to. Go see what you're going to go see over there, and there's no judgment. It's like removing judgment completely, the dissolving of the Virgo-Pisces axis. There's no more good or bad or anything. It's just like, you're into that, I'm into this, we're exploring that together. And if, you know, the winds move us in a similar direction, we find common interest, fantastic. Aquarius, right? There's the unity.
Yeah. And it's exactly that. And to go through the body, I was savior of the world for many years, but I stopped that. I really got it. It's inside. You got to observe yourself, and it's a temple, really. Yeah. I will talk more about that next week. But thank you very, very much. It's really good to hear you, and we really need this. And it's a process. We do it together to assure Capricorn, because the old is so terrible. We need a new Capricorn, because we need a balance with Cancer.
Yes.
And that's really important. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening and you know, wanting to participate in something like this.
Loved it, SΥmÖN. Absolutely loved it.
Thank.
I can relate to, I can relate to so much of what you were saying, and I was constantly, in the background. Thank goodness that I was on mute because I was saying, "Preach it, brother, preach it." I'm part of that Uranus-Pluto conjunction, so yeah, I was definitely like, yes.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I had like loads of pictures on my PC that I wanted to put together for you guys specifically, and to show the trajectory. And maybe I can do that in a different conversation where somebody else has done it, but. You are literally here to go like, no, down with the governmental system that's rooted in just the anti body work, like just yeah, and the Pluto and Scorpios run with it, and the Pluto and Libras are here to balance it and go, look, this is fair, this is just, this is not just. Anybody else got some questions or anything that they wanted to say?
I had one more thing I want to add because of the images that you used. I think they were awesome because you brought up the cross, the Christ figure, and a part of the imagery and the archetype of that. What I thought is brilliant in that piece is that master, as we know from teachings, was all about pointing that the kingdom is within, but also Buddha, went within. And it was, it's all pointing towards that. And even in the scriptures somewhere, I don't know where it's at exactly, the Christ speaks to looking towards the man with the water. And then he's speaking about the age of Aquarius, basically. Yes. I think this is awesome. It's just with the imagery and the archetype and kind of, looking at it from that perspective as well. These are great sharings around this subject.
Yeah, thanks so much. I mean, like I even got a picture of the Simpsons where they were one of the scenes of like a tribunal and the women like against the crosses, and you could see how this archetype is in the architecture of our consciousness through the cartoon. Like that's how deeply ingrained it is within our spectrum of awareness. Now, if you're not sensitive to that, then it just seems as if that's what life is about. And that's what, to me, is really what this is about, is like bringing up this subtleness and to the front of our awareness and going, like, do you see it? Do we see it? And I know that, so many of you that are sitting here today do see that, which is why you'll appreciate it. And it's only my wish, to pass it on in a way that externalizes it. And it becomes even more and more as if, hold on, no, there is an actual like framework of stuff that's coloring our lenses for what the truth is really about. And the more that we give that attention, the more we're actually going to see a shift. I feel like the shift already occurred, whether we do anything about it or not. It's just the degree at which it's going to occur, cataclysm or progressive change, right? Oh, that's the funny part about being human. Anyway.
You're funny, SΥmÖN. May I say also about this Christ symbol? Because I was raised in a very strict fundamental Christianity, and that wasn't pleasant at all for me. It was totally terrible. But if you see this cross and this Christ, why, I always wondered, why doesn't the celebration is because he came back from that, showed a
resurrection, the ascension process.
Yeah, and so many other things. And it's so deeply engraved in ourselves also, so we have to free ourselves from those.
Yeah, so the Aquarius age, deconditioning, right? And the best part about the archetype of deconditioning is that it's not actually letting go of anything, it's just becoming more of yourself.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I see that's the hour over there, so I suspect that's time. But for me, I would like to thank every single one of you for attending this today. I from the bottom of my heart, I deeply appreciate all of your time and your attention. And from how I understand, I think that this was something that was really enriching. So from my point of view, I feel deeply satisfied with the process, even though coming up to this experience, I was a complete nervous wreck because I was like, I don't know what to say, even though this is the thing, like Jen reminded me of, is like, this is the thing that you always, this is your story. So yeah, and thank you to her as well.
So SΥmON, thank you so much. Thanks for putting all of that into words for us, this very natural process. So thank you and see you again, and unmuting everybody now.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, SΥmON.
And great work. Much appreciated.
Just excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Take care.